I'm gonna love you.
Okay guys, Integrity here. One or two of you requested to see my build, and as one or two of you makes up a large percentage of my subscriber base, I'm definitely going to go ahead and post that. I had been waiting for some time to get this up just because Mod 13 was about to drop and I knew there were some changes I was going to want to make, and now I kind of have done that. I've kind of done that. Alright, so one of the big changes I made was I switched away from my old honey badger, which was really not doing much for me except I just had gear for it. And that's okay. If you have a companion and you have great offensive gear for it, you don't have to switch. It's not going to make or break you, but I'm happy I finally got a debuff companion. This Tiger of Cholt is pretty sweet. It is confirmed that the debuff stacks with other tigers, so you don't have to worry about being the only one with a tiger in the party, or you don't have to worry about your tiger's debuff going to waste if somebody else has a tiger. So that's pretty good. The old Sellsword and the Con Artist are still a great option, especially with all these great new rings that just came out. The Con Artist specifically has 3 ring slots and a nice 10% debuff. So that's going to be an awesome one as well, because there's so much customizability. Is that a word? Who knows? There's so many ways you can customize your companion right now. This tiger has 2 ring slots and 1 neck slot. I will get to that eventually, but first I'll start by saying this is my single target boss burn build. For trash, I have another one. It's a little more tanky because I'm not really focused on DPS so much with my AoE build. It's more of like a movement speed, just getting through the dungeon as quickly as possible. It's more of a buff slash tank build, my AoE build, than this is. This is purely DPS, and I think that's what most people want to see. Okay. Alright, so I'll just start with my encounters. Villain's Menace is pretty much the only daily that I ever use. There are some situations where I'll pop a fighter's recovery before I run into some situation that I know I might get one shot if I play it stupid. Another reason I might have I might use fighter's recovery is just maybe you're farming a tier 2 or Castle Never, something like that, and you know you got matched up with a healer who just can't keep you alive. And that's going to happen sometimes. Although I do run lifesteal, nothing really matches Fighter's Recovery for its consistency and its reliability. That being said, DPS, Villain's Menace, for obvious reasons. You can go ahead and read that tooltip if you want. It does increase the amount of damage that you do after you use it. Okay, so Villain's Menace is the only daily that I ever use. Let's go down to class features. I use Combat Superiority. That's a great one. Shield Warrior's Wrath. I think most people know at this point that Shield Warrior's Wrath is a great way to stack up additional damage. If you're using the Survivor's Wraps like I do, you can just throw your shield up, take a step back, cancel, and your Survivor's Wraps will proc your Shield Warrior's Wrath. Here's how you do it. Yep. 5 stacks. 5 stacks. That's going to be 5 stacks to your Capstone, Reckless Attacker. 5 stacks to shield. That's going to come into play during your rotation. Obviously, that's step 1. Anyhow, I'm getting ahead of myself. Shield Warrior's Wrath, Combat Superiority, Griffin's Wrath. That's where I get most of my damage from. Knight's Challenge doubles the damage you do. That one's kind of a no-brainer. Into the Fray, of course. I think this is a pretty standard setup for DPS Guardian Fighters. If you're running something else, maybe under 50%, a lot of people maybe under 40% health, somebody will switch to, let's say, Anvil. I know a lot of people like to run Knee Breaker too. That's fine. Knee Breaker procs Crushing Pin. But as far as I'm concerned, nothing matches Griffin's Wrath in terms of just being able to melt something. For at wills here, we're using Weapon Master Strike. It is feated so that it's a debuff. And Tide of Iron, which is also a debuff. Maybe these weren't so great back in the day, but now that there is no cap, now that there's no hard cap on debuffs, stack as many debuffs as you can get. My main go-to artifact here is the Soul Sight Crystal. Some people argue for the wheel. There's nothing wrong with the wheel. I think that when you're clearing trash, the wheel is just fine. As it lasts longer, it's a little more consistent over time. But when you're burning, you're going to want to have someone to give you their fire buff. You shouldn't have to, if you're the DPS for the fight, you shouldn't have to use your wheel. Somebody else should be standing right behind you to give you their wheel as soon as the fight starts. Yeah. I won't go into that anymore. I use Tensor's Disc as my mount power. Although I've seen plenty of Guardian fighters burn a boss to nothing in 15 seconds without even touching their mount power. So having a mount power is nice, but not completely necessary. If you've got a team that can get you to around 200% debuff, you should be just fine even if you don't have a mount power. I know asking people to make a build revolving around a mount that costs 14 million is kind of outrageous. So if you're on a budget, keep in mind it's totally fine to skip the mount power. Also, Tensor's Disc arguably isn't even best in slot. A lot of people advocate for the T-Rex that I think it's like a 10% debuff from its roar. People say that's a whole lot better, and they're probably right, depending on what percentage people can get the debuffs to in your team. Because if you got, let's say you got a team that's already capable of getting the enemy to the 300% debuff soft cap, you know, might as well throw on Tensor's Disc and add a little more damage to your punch. It could go either way. Some people like the Lion as well. The Lion is great because it shields your temporary hit points. And some of you might know that when you have temporary hit points, you do a little more damage. I think 15% more. Alright. So, encounters are all listed there. At wills, all that stuff. Let's go into... let's see here. Let's take a look at my feats. Now this, I'm going to go ahead and say before I go through all these, there is no one specific build. There's no one specific build. It all depends on your tune, the stats you're getting. Your needs might not be the same as my needs. So this is, while this is kind of like a template, there's definitely some room to make adjustments. I by no means think this is the 100% endgame build that everyone should use. Okay, so I've got this open really quickly. If you end up screenshotting this or just pausing the video here so you can look at it, that's probably the easiest way to copy it onto your build. But really quickly, I'm just going to go through them one at a time. 5 points into action surge. I just love getting hit and gaining those action points. If I can get Villain's Menace back faster, great. Okay, effectiveness of strength, 15%. That's a great one. Hit points, got to get your hit points up. That works really well with Aura of Courage. The more hit points you have in a party with an OP, the more damage you're going to do. End of story. Okay. Increase the effectiveness of armor class and defense by 15%. I don't have a lot of defense these days. Sometimes I miss it. So any extra kick I can get out of my defense, great. Awesome. Keeping it. Okay, here we go. Gain 1% of your... I only have 1 point in this. Grit. Gain 1% of your max hit points as temporary hit points when you're healed by a player power. Doesn't proc very often, but anytime you have temporary hit points, you're doing more damage, so can't go wrong. Why not? I had an extra point to spend, threw it in here. Alright, powerful attack. This is kind of a no-brainer also. You want to increase the damage of your at-will and encounter powers for sure. I am human, so I have 3 extra points to spend. Maybe I forgot to say that. Alright, critical chance improved by 3%. My theory here is maybe you don't need that 3% crit. Maybe you can get it somewhere else. But, okay, anytime you have crit through Feats or Boons, any place you have crit in this manner is somewhere else you can put power. You can dump points into power somewhere else. So if you can get crit out of your Feats, get crit out of your Feats, and that'll save you some room to dump power into your tune elsewhere. Alright, Conqueror Path. This one, I believe, is very straightforward. I don't think it varies too much from build to build. First one, Take Measure. When you are crit, gain temporary hit points. Again, temporary hit points. Why? Why do I want temporary hit points? Oh, okay. Here's why. Wrathful Warrior, when you have temporary hit points, you deal 15% more damage. It's awesome. Can't go wrong. Okay, Jagged Blades. When you critically strike a foe, they begin to bleed. The bleed lasts 10 seconds and deals 750% of your weapon damage over its duration. This does scale with buffs currently. At the moment, if you're being buffed like crazy, your weapon damage is a lot higher. The bleed damage is a lot higher. I've seen some crazy numbers on bleeds. Just believe me, it's totally worth it. Okay, Staggering Challenge. This is what puts the oomph behind our Griffin's Wrath. This means basically your Griffin's Wrath is going to do 20% more damage with each successful hit. In addition, the damage that you do from Knight's Challenge is increased by 10%, so that means it's going to add not 100% extra damage. It's going to be 110%. Take it. It works 2 ways. We use both of these encounters. Like, there's nothing, you got to take it, obviously. Alright, Tactical Superiority. You deal 5% more damage, which is good alone. And then Combat Superiority grants an additional 5% damage. And we use Combat Superiority. So, right here, that's another 10% damage. Capstone, you can take it if you want to. You don't have to. Just kidding. Obviously, take this. This is our capstone. This is where we get a ton of crit. And this is the reason we only have to stack to 90% crit. If we can get ourselves to 90% crit chance, then we're fine. Because we get 10% crit from our capstone here, Reckless Attacker. And I believe 25% extra damage, which is good. Okay, cool. Alright, moving on. 5% chance to deflect. Yeah, sure, I'll take it. Anytime I can get a flat 5% without putting any points into my deflect, no problem. Awesome. Also, it's a little bit better than this. Take 10% less damage when your stamina is low. Meh, can't use it. And we took that so we can get to staying power. Staying power. Weapon Master Strike now also is a debuff. It reduces your target's mitigation to your encounter powers. Mitigation is resistance ignored, or sorry, is damage resistance. Basically, you're reducing the enemy's resistance to your encounter powers by 10%. So that means, in theory, your encounter powers hit 10% harder. Take it. Work it into your rotation. It's worth it. Last but not least, Crushing Pin. Your control powers cause the target to take 10% bonus damage for 3 seconds. And Griffin, let's go ahead and say Griffin's Wrath is a control power. It stuns the target. It doesn't say when the target's stunned, it just says your control powers cause the target to take 10% bonus damage. So here, as we're using Griffin's Wrath, not only is each staggering powered hit doing 20% more, but because Griffin's Wrath is a control, you're getting an additional 10% out of each successive hit. So the first hit, maybe not that strong, but the second hit is guaranteed to be at least 30% stronger than the first one. 30% is a lot. Okay, that's it for feats. I guess I did forget to talk about the points that I put in here. I did strength. I think I put some. Let me see. No, I didn't put any charisma into this. That's interesting. All right, I will remake this eventually, just because combat advantage damage is a big way that a lot of Guardian fighters get their damage these days. I think at the time I might have just messed up my loadouts when I was doing last time, but yeah, there's nothing wrong with strength and constitution, but you won't quite get as much out of your Griffin. I'll test it at some point, but I still believe that if I were to have gone charisma over constitution, Griffin's Wrath would be hitting for a little bit more. Let's go ahead and say maybe 5%. Obviously I don't know for sure, but there's 2 ways you can do it. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and say there's 3 ways you can do it. I went strength and constitution. That's fine, because I guess at the time I wanted more hit points. But I will also say there's nothing wrong with going dexterity if you need a little bit more defenses ignored. Defenses ignored is the new way that we're saying armor pen or resistance ignored. So if you need a little more resistance ignored, put your points into dexterity. If you think your hit points are fine and you don't need that tankiness, go charisma. Get a little more damage. Again, like I said, it's not 100% build for everybody. It's not going to work for everybody across the board. Just know that you don't have to follow this build exactly to get the results that you're looking for. Maybe you don't go constitution, maybe you go charisma. That's fine. Maybe you go dexterity instead of constitution. That's fine too, because you got to hit your 85% mark on the defenses ignored. All right, done talking about that. Okay. Boons. Alright, I'm just going to click through these quickly so you can go ahead and look at them. I will say that I use, at the moment, without an OP in the party, without a paladin in the party, I use lifesteal. Keeps me alive. I'm happy with it. If there was a paladin in the party, I'd go with the hit points, just because, again, Aura of Courage is a pretty nice damage boost. I use power. I would say try to use power if you can. Some people use armor pen because they can't find a way to hit the level of armor pen that they need. I would say desperately try to get your armor pen up without using this boon. If you can use power, more damage. Alright. Here we have Sherindar. I'm not going to spend any time talking about this. Dread Ring. Icewind Dale. Underdark. And again. Okay, as I'm clicking through these, I will again stress the point that this is not a one-size-fits-all build. As you're going through your boons, think about them. Don't just follow what I'm doing and mindlessly put points in. Look between the two of them. Lifesteal severity, incoming healing bonus. Look between the two. Make sure that the one you're choosing is the right one for you. Because I guarantee you there's going to be one or two differences that you're going to want to make, and only you know your tune. I don't know your tune. I don't assume to. I'm showing you my tune. So don't just assume that what I have decided is going to work best for you. It's all about stats. I can't stress that enough. It's about stats. It's about what you have and what you're able to hit, not about my stats. Oh, look at that. I didn't finish River District, and I probably never will because I find it so boring. Sorry. If you were really hoping to figure out which boons to take for the River District path, the Cloak Ascendancy path, I'm sorry. I opted out of that one. And I have not finished the Mod 13 boons yet. Yeah. I did finish the Mod 12 boons. Just haven't started on the Omu ones yet. That's coming soon, maybe. But like I said, boons are not going to make or break your tune by any means. What am I missing? Okay. Oh, that's right. There's so much to a build now. Okay, companions. Let's go ahead. Proud to have the Cholton Tiger now. That's an awesome one. Started combat, your run speed and damage are increased by 5%. That's really great. Love it. Okay, got my bonding rank 14s, 2 rings. This is one of the changes that I made recently. I put in one of these double offensive masterwork rings. I just use brutals. I like having a little more power. I get my crit through one of my mount powers and through my body. My theory is the more armor pen I can get onto my base character, if I can get more armor pen onto my base and crit onto my base, that crit and armor pen is always there. So as long as I'm relying on my companion to proc for power, mostly power, that's going to be better for me. That's just my opinion. Because, what happens when your companion falls off the edge in Tomb of the Nine Gods right off the bat? And everyone's like, well, I'm not restarting. Sorry. We're just going to have to deal with it. Now you've got no armor pen. Now you've got no crit. So if you can get more crit onto your body, onto your base, which is your character, instead of your companion, better. If you can't, that's fine too. There's nothing wrong with stacking crit. There's nothing wrong with stacking crit and armor pen on your companion. I'm just moving towards getting it off my companion and onto my character. Alright, I have Loyal Avenger gear. Sorry guys, I know you can't get this cheap anymore. But that being said, I am trying to move away from it. I think it's about time with the new Masterwork rings coming out that I can kind of leave this stuff behind and move on to double offensive things. There are plenty of ways to get your damage resistance up without needing to rely on these defensive slots. Almost everybody in almost everybody in today's meta party has enough tools to get your damage resistance up. I can go over that in more depth, but I promise you, if you're in a party with an Oathbound Paladin and 2 DCs, your damage resistance, it's not going to be able to get any higher. So you're not going to be able to, you're not going to need to rely on damage resistance of your own so much. Okay. All right. I think that's enough time showing off my tiger. Uh, Tiger, that's my main. That's my active. It's great. Love it. Aaron Eyes, 10% crit severity, just because I don't naturally hit 100%, so I use it. I think I have about 105% crit severity. It's not a ton, but it's over 100%, and that makes me feel good about myself. Siege Master, I like it a lot. Um, it's versatile, works in a lot of situations. Sure, I think some other companions, like maybe the Batiri, is it the Batiri Runt? Maybe the Batiri Runt. That one is like 5% damage to bosses, which is basically what this build is for. It's for burning bosses, right? So maybe somebody would opt into the 5% instead of the 4%, but 8% works really well when you're burning dragons on Stronghold, if anybody even does that these days. Fire Archon and Air Archon. These companions are pretty straightforward. I'm sure they could be better. I'm sure there's a combo that works really well for somebody else. Just remember, there's always going to be somebody out there who does more damage than you. I'm sure there's somebody out there who does more damage than me. I'm pretty sure I've run into several Guardian Fighters that do more damage than me. But it tends to be very situational. So if you're seeing somebody melt a boss in a way that you've never done before, don't feel bad. Maybe you could do it. You don't know. Maybe you could do it. Maybe you just haven't found that right party yet. It's not fair. It's not fair to compare yourself to somebody else. Just do what you can do. Okay. Went over this earlier. My combat power is tensors. For my equip power, I use the Imperial Rage Drake for the 4,000 crit, like I said earlier, trying to get as much crit onto my base tune as possible. My mount's movement speed isn't important. Okay, let me get into this stuff. Insignia bonuses. Gladiator's Guile. I love it. Gotta run fast. Gotta go fast. Just getting from point A to point B is so important. Because you know you're going to have people running ahead. Nobody's waiting for anybody anymore. If you can't keep up, you're behind, and that's just the way it is. If you're not at the front of the line, you're at the back of the line. If you're not first, you're last. Ricky Bobby. Crap. I can't believe I still have this. Okay. I took this, although it's not really... It doesn't work as much as I thought it would. Maybe I can get rid of that at some point. I saw it at first. Whenever you control an enemy, you gain 5% combat advantage damage for 10 seconds. It's cool. You do a little more damage to enemies that can be controlled. It's just unfortunate that there's so many enemies that can't be controlled. So a lot of the time, mainly during boss fights, it's not doing anything for you. What I would recommend putting here instead of that, let me go ahead and say Protector's Friendship. Let me see. Which one of these guys has it? Maybe it's the Winter Wolf. Protector's Friendship. Let's see here. Yeah, whenever your summoned companion attacks, you gain 1% of your power and defense. It can stack up to 4 times. So let's go ahead and put Protector's Friendship there. Okay, I won't for now. I will keep that, but just keep in mind, Protector's Friendship is probably a better option than Combatant's Maneuver. Alright, moving on. Everybody makes mistakes. Okay. Protector's Camaraderie. The enhanced version of Protector's Friendship. You gain 3% of your power and defense for 10 seconds. Whenever your summoned companion attacks, you gain 3% of your power and defense for 10 seconds. This can stack up to 4 times. Works very well with Protector's Friendship. So the two of those kind of go hand in hand. Alright, moving on. Shepherd's Devotion. When you use a daily power, receive a buff. It's defense, it's deflection, it's movement, and it's based on power, and it's based on your buffed power too. So this is great for the team. I don't necessarily use it for myself, although it does help. It's amazing for the team in terms of not only survivability, but also getting from point A to point B in a dungeon. I often will hit into the fray and then use Villain's Menace and then shield cancel it just to activate this. That's probably not working as intended. They probably want you to have to completely use the daily, but you can't. There are many dailies that you can start to use and then cancel to trigger this, and it will help the team get from point A to point B much more efficiently. I'll show you in a minute. Alright, last is Cavalry's Warning. Just whenever you activate your mount power, gain 10% to your power. Everything. Who's not taking this? This is for the people who have dumped in a crap ton of Astral Diamonds and or Zen into buying their legendary mount, and this, I guess this is the dev's way of just rewarding you for spending more. It's like, here, have an increase of all your stats on us once a minute for what, 10 seconds? I think it's 10 seconds. It's a short amount of time. Have we covered all the bases? Alright, well, let me show you some of these. Don't don't follow my lead here, guys. There are these are discount insignias. I can't currently justify putting in power or crit insignias just because of how much money it costs. The amount that you have to spend, the return on investment is just not there. If you've absolutely maxed your tune and you want to drop 1.5 million, 2 million to get 200 extra power, by all means go for it. But for me, just the hit points and a little bit of recovery here and there, a little bit of deflect maybe, like, is fine. It's more about making the insignia bonus than the insignias themselves. Put green ones in there for all I care. Get your bonus. That's what it's all about. It's not about the stats. That comes later. That's extreme min-maxing in my mind. Yeah. Okay, so we've gone over the mounts on the insignia bonuses. Showed you my companions, what I like. I guess I will quickly go through just to show you what I am packing here. I use the Rex Corona. I like the power. I like that it took me some work to earn. So now that Mod 13 is out, or Mod 12C is out, I like this. This is new. It's pretty easy to get to. Took me like an hour or two to farm the stuff for it. I use my Survivor's wraps still to this day. Got myself the primal gear. Love it. Don't have the augmentation cubes yet. Too poor to fix this. So it's stuck on something that I wouldn't normally use. Steel Grace increases your control resistance by an additional 10%. Manage artifact powers. Change. Now I'm thinking I'll just go Shield Warrior's Wrath. Increases damage done by aggravating strike and sealed slam. I do throw up my shield and poke things over it once in a while. That's a little extra damage. I'll take it. If somebody else wants to leave in the comments what they would use instead of that, please let me know, because I've always kind of been like wishy-washy about this. I've never felt that there was any one in particular that really benefited me. I use combat advantage bonus, which is probably stupid. I think I'm a little over. I could probably swap that to action point gain, or maybe stamina gain. Um, just because I'm over 1200. 1200 is where you start hitting diminished returns. So not really seeing as much of a benefit from the combat advantage bonus. But again, when I get more cubes of augmentation, but I'm broke right now. As you can see, I'm like selling. I just had to deconstruct my alts, and I'm basically selling everything right now. Selling everything from all my alts, just to try to keep up with this mod. There's so much to buy, so much to do. Primal Raid, that gives me a little bit of armor pen. I use the Beast Slayer. I'm trying to hit all brutals wherever I can. Wherever I can, brutals. I think I have two Azures in offensive, one here and one here. Yep. These will eventually get swapped. Sandy's pants are going to go for the new primal pants, the tattooed ones. I'll probably get the primal shirt also. But for right now, this is fine for me. Alright, I think you can see everything. Yeah, I'll just quickly go down here. Lifesteal 9,000, almost 10,000. That's a little high. One of the reasons it's so high is probably because this beaded assault ring and the Loyal Avenger gear just gives me a little extra, even though I don't necessarily need it right now. But like I said, I'm going to be transitioning. I'm going to be trying to get even this off of my companion. I'm going to try to get all my armor pen off my companion in the future and onto my toon, just because. Alright, I'm rambling now. Alright, time to go through the rotation, I guess, to bring it all home. Oh, I didn't show you the Soulsight Crystal. I have the Giant. Lantern of Revelation. Okay, I could lose Lantern of Revelation at this point. With armor pen like that, right? I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud here. I like that combat advantage bonus. Yeah, I might keep it long term. I won't tell you what I have planned here. Believe it or not, I was thinking of swapping away from the Demogorgon set and leaning toward the new Masterwork stuff that has a little more armor pen. This stuff is good. It gives power, crit, strength, and con. Power, crit, and deflection. But the new Masterwork stuff just gives so much crit, so much power, and instead of deflection, it gives armor pen also. And then that would free up this slot right here to use something like the Fragmented Key of Many Stars, which would just be awesome. Okay. Alright. Let's just do the rotation now. Okay. Step 1 is going to be getting those procs up. Then I mark. Then I Villain's Menace. Then I use my... Did that last one not hit? It's so wonky sometimes. Anyways, there it is. Enjoy. That's the build. Alright. Bye, guys. Leave questions. I can clarify anywhere. Just leave questions in the comments. I will get back to them. Message me in game if you want. I don't mind. If I can reply, I always will. Okay, see you later.